Throughout the late summer into the fall, I've been discussing different ways to talk about the Bible, different ways to study the Bible, different approaches towards it, some of which are really helpful, some of which are not very helpful, some of which there are actual distractions and obstacles to you being able to understand Scripture effectively. And I used a particular word that many of you may have never heard before in the process called polemical. And it's kind of an archaic or an obscure term in contrast especially to the idea of apologist. That's become a pretty commonly used one now with the popularity of different ministries like Frank Turek's Cross-Examined or whatever, inspiring philosophy, that are fairly notorious on their own. And so there'll be apologists, people that defend the truth of Christian faith, as well as different philosophical principles and kind of foundational stones that it's built on. So there's actually a whole spectrum, if we want to use that, of different particular categories of people who talk about religious subjects. And it's important for you as an individual to know which kind of a speaker that you're dealing with in order for you to understand their rhetorical goals and their particular objectives that they have, their designs, their intentions that they have for a specific conversation or speech or message that you might be listening to, video, whatever it happens to be. So the first is the conversational, the one that's he's just talking. And some will actually do this from a platform. Most panel discussions are this way, of that you have to take it with a grain of salt. They're going to be speaking heavily from their own individual experience and opinion, far more so than they will be grounded in any sort of tradition or theological system or even Scripture itself. And so you may hear scriptural references tossed out or different specific people and names and references tossed out, but it's mostly the individual speaking on their own behalf, and it's important to recognize that. Most, if you want to say, table discussions of theology, the Bible, etc., are done in this fashion. Most Bible studies, if you go to a church just about anywhere and you're sitting there, some people have their Bibles open, some people won't, but as they're discussing things, it's usually going to be in this fashion, in that the authority of the matter is usually going to be set aside. Oh, we're just talking, we're just discussing stuff. The second step forward is the disciple. This could be anybody at any stage, regardless of titles or collars or whatever, degrees. The disciple is the one who's just learning, constantly absorbing information, maybe low in terms of overall discernment, maybe not well attuned in terms of a discernment compass, and so may consider some sort of insight that they have perceived from whatever most recent anime episode they watched to be on par with the sermon that they were listening to on the way to work, and just it's Sarah Young's Jesus Calling and Chicken Soup for the Soul and Uncle John's Bathroom Reader and just about anything. And on the one hand, seeing it all as theological, or at least kind of religiously philosophical, is sort of valid, with caveats. But they don't have a well-attuned distinction about where to put these things authoritatively. What should transcend the others? And is it okay, or how much to eat the meat and leave the bones, things of that nature. And so, quite frankly, they may say things that are actually inaccurate. They may say things that are actually not Christian theology. They may say things that are actually um, panned, forbidden as heresies in proper Christian context, but they're learning. And so, with this person, something that's really important to recognize is that they're learning, and they need to be encouraged in doing so, but they need to be cultivated in doing so as well. They need someone who's going to be a wise guide to come along and that's a bad source. Stay over here with this one, putting in guardrails, lines on the concrete for them to follow so that they can help develop. You don't want to quash what they're doing, which is just learning. They're going to say things that are silly and stupid. They're going to say things that are actually unwise, dangerous at times. But being gentle and gracious and seeing them for what they are, especially in contrast to maybe what they had been previously. The new congregant, the new convert is going to be the definition of this in some ways, of that they're just excited. They just came across some new blog and they're super hyped about everything. They constantly want to meet with anyone and everyone to study the Bible, their little New Testament or their little um, uh, faux leatherback message, or whatever. Like, they're just excited. The next category, number 3, is going to be the one that is he's the apologist. And this is going to be the one that is always on the defensive. Anytime he hears other people talking, you might say this is like a cage stage Calvinist as well, kind of overlaps with this, of that he's constantly on the hunt for other people saying things that he disagrees with so that he can disagree with them. Um, this person is going to interact with atheists a lot on the internet. They're going to interact with other denominational Christians on a regular basis. Everyone is less intelligent than they are, obviously. And they need to be handled with care. It's actually an amalgam of the previous version and what I'll get to next, in that they are still lacking in discernment in a lot of ways. But they've got enough knowledge to make them dangerous. It's like a second-year law student that they might have the most expertise or insight of anyone that they know, but they don't have that much compared to someone that's an actual experienced professional, if you want to say it that way. And so they have the ability to burn bridges. They have the ability to emotionally harm others if they are not supervised well by a wise and effective mentor. The next is the polemicist, the person who is, they their main goal is regarding non-believers. That their primary goal is to simply seek and destroy outlying uh, anti-Christian stuff. So the apologist is the one that's dealing with other Christians mostly, and then is often on the defensive when non-believers are posting things on the internet. Whereas the polemicist is the one that's going after non-believers. He's going to be the one that actually stands on the corner with a soapbox. He's the one that is going to have the table change my mind. He's going to be the one that these sort of things. And their main thing is going to be learning things that are not Christian, reading secular philosophy and reading secular creation narratives and reading about pagan ideological systems for the purpose of demolishing them, debunking them, and so forth. This is going to be a person that spends a lot of time reading, a lot of time with books, a lot of time, um, and often, honestly, they're better off that way. This is going to be the person that, if you have an evangelistic service and you're going to have the repent night, if you want to call it that, at the youth conference, the closer, that's who this is, potentially, with some safeguards in place. He's also going to be the type of person that is going to be teaching classes on specific subject matter about, let's say, if this person is an Arminian, let's say they're Pentecostal in theology or something, they could teach a class on um, uh, debunking, if you want to say that, Calvinism, or specifically Islam, or how to approach um, the issues of Buddhism or homosexuality. They're going to talk a lot about sin issues. The next category is going to be the evangelist. They don't care about anything but the gospel. They're going to say a lot of things. They're going to come across video comment sections, and they're going to say a lot of things like, all it's you're making things too complex, too difficult. Just preach the gospel is basically their catchphrase. This evangelist is going to be the one that loves to give altar calls. If you have somebody that you want to do or the lead a prayer ministry, they're probably the one to do it. That um, they're they're a little bit emotionally sensitive, overly sensitive maybe. They tend to get really upset with the polemicist, the apologist, um, because of the fact that they think that those two are ruining Christianity. Their bickering, their divisiveness, that it's they're the evangelist is also the most likely to say something along the lines of no creed but Christ, no book but the Bible. But on the other hand, an ironic twist is they may be willing to actually set the Bible aside in order to lead someone to faith. And that sounds kind of weird, but this is the person that may actually, in order to try to build a bridge with someone that's a non believer, will say, no, don't worry about that stuff in the Old Testament. Just read about Jesus. Start in the book of John. Like, there are these type of individuals where it's all about just getting you to Jesus. The next would be the apostle. Now, not with a capital A, but someone who has an apostolic leadership kind of gifting. This is the one that wants to found new institutions, wants to start new ministries, sees stuff going on, and their immediate response is that we need to set up a committee about this thing. And we need to do some investigation. We need to get some data together. We need to do some research and so forth. That's what they're doing. And this is going to be the one that if they find out like their town has a really bad homeless problem, they are the ones that we need to go to a conference so that we can get some resources on how to conduct outreach to the homeless. They're the ones that are constantly trying to galvanize their recruiters. They're the ones that would go up to you and say, I've got this job that needs to be done, and I need 5 people. Are you willing to help? They're the ones as well you're probably going to have in the greeting ministry, the hospitality divisions of your church. They are more than happy to join your council of elders or your deacon board or things of that nature, because they're all about organization. They're all about administration, budgets, and buildings, and you probably will find them on a regular basis at your church working on some sort of hardware thing, putting screws into a door hinge or things of that nature, or they're going over the budget line by line. They're trying to figure out where to find some budget room so that whatever. That's what the apostle does. In fact, when you look at the history of the church, one of the things the apostles, which literally just means sent ones, are one of the things that they often did was that they prayed, they preached, and they distributed food until they delegated that to the next thing is the deacons. These are really important guys because all they do is work. They are the ones that you call when you need anything at the church. If the driveway needs to be shoveled, or if the parking lot needs blown off, or whatever it is, the deacons are your guys. They're probably not going to talk a whole lot. They're just going to be hands busy type individuals. And obviously, any institution has these. Don't bother asking them about the Bible necessarily, because all they know is in James somewhere it says that faith without works is dead, and they're not dead yet. And then the next is maybe the most important of all these categorizations, but it's the apostate. In contrast to the apostle, apostles are the ones that are sent ones. They're all about the church and their affection for it, but they're more than willing to found a parachurch ministry if that's what's needed in order to focus on a larger goal. The apostate is the one who you'll see builds a YouTube or a whatever it is ministry, if we want to call it that, on I grew up in the church, but now I'm an atheist, now I'm a pagan, now I'm a Satanist or a diabolist or whatever. They're apostate. They're progressives. They're going to have rainbows. They're going to be Christian agnostic. They're going to promote themselves as being openly participating in secular or counter Christian worldviews and lifestyles and such, and promoting all sorts of things. But there's a second form of the apostate, and that's the ones that's married themselves to politics. The ones that are already talking about who they are going to vote for. The ones that are already talking about whatever, that are really enraged over certain trials or bills or things of that nature. Now, it's not wrong necessarily for you to be a Christian and to be invested in political atmospheres. Those are incredibly good things potentially. And it's not necessarily wrong or evil or immoral for a Christian to run for an office or a delegation or be on the board for various things. Like, that's not necessarily wrong. But when you substitute Jesus for whatever the political candidate's name happens to be, or that people know you more significantly for your forness or againstness of certain politically elevated issues, rather than knowing that you're the Jesus guy, you are dangerously close to, if not already, slipping into the realm of apostasy. As well, if people know you more so for your stance on the legalization, acquisition, or regulation of, let's say, guns, abortion, whatever, if they know that more than they know what your favorite Bible verse, Bible character happens to be, there's something very wrong about that. There's something very devastatingly off-center about that, and you should be concerned. That's what the issue is with being apostate. Now, it's not unrecoverable, but of course, like I said, there's two different categories of this apostate. There's the one that is accidental, the one that just needs to be realigned, needs to be brought back into the fold because they've become distracted or disillusioned. And then there's the ones that are openly trying to evangelize against Christ and his church. The ones that I grew up in church as a Catholic or whatever it was that they were, and now I'm an atheist, and now all I do is troll Christians on the internet. That is something totally different. The one that I got all the badges in Sunday school, went off to college, and came home after my first semester of Philosophy 101 not believing. Or that once I finally got out of my parents' house and I was able to get away out from under their supervision for the first time and started experimenting with things that I shouldn't be experimenting with. Now all of a sudden I'm not a Christian anymore. When what the Bible would say is that you never were. But the act of using that past association as a weapon against the church, that's the problem. That's what makes them apostate. And then, last but not least, is the counter apologist. The ones that are out there, the Richard Dawkins, the Sam Harris, these of, as well as their various popular level of followers, that all they do is just try to convert people to atheism and agnosticism. And they'd say, like, they say silly things like that atheism's not a belief, it's the lack thereof. And they say very silly, non-academic, ridiculous things in order to make themselves seem less extreme in their position. That everyone's an atheist, just they're only atheists about one more deity than I am. Like, they say silly things. But they're doing that because they're trying to sell a conversion kit to their position on the matter of, does God exist? Is the Christian church and its claims about God true? And so it's something to consider. So there's this whole spectrum, and you can't just approach every single one of these individuals the same way. A counter apologist and an apostate are not the same thing necessarily. They overlap greatly, but they're not necessarily the same thing. They have to be approached, handled, and rhetorically dialogued with in different ways. In the same way that you would deal differently with a teammate you're sparring with versus a competitor on the field. Let's say if you're a wrestler, you're in combat or something, you're going to deal with someone who's an apologist, someone who's a Christian, but that just kind of squirrely about different internal debates. Whether or not the earth is this age or that age, or whether or not evolution, or like all those different things that Christians to debate about. You'll deal with that person differently than you should a polemicist, the one that they are front towards the enemy when it comes to their interactions with secularists. And one of the really important things to highlight about all of this is that all of these people, with the exception of the counter-apologist and the apostate, all of these people are part of the church, that we're all parts of one body, and that even those, the counter-apologists and the apostate on that far end, every single one of them has the ability to bring glory to God in their own unique way, whether they like it or not, but especially if God wills it. And so, for instance, if you interact with counter-apologists or trolls on the internet or apostate individuals, your thing should be to pray so that they give their lives to Christ, and as a result, glorify him through his ability to redeem them from who they are. That's my story. I was an atheist counter-apologist at a time, and now I'm not that. Another thing is to look for opportunities to learn from and also refine the other members of this spectrum. If you are an apologist, you should be interacting with polemicists on a regular basis to hone your understanding of the opponents. A polemicist should definitely interact with apologists so that they can learn better their own belief systems and refine them and build better understandings of them. And then um, the disciple obviously should seek out the polemicist and the apologist and the evangelist for the purpose of being discipled by them and learning from them the knowledge they have, as well as the insight that comes from their experiences interacting with different kinds of opponents and so forth. And then recognizing that within the realm of Christianity, all these things are needed. You don't always need an apologist. You don't always need a polemicist, but you do eventually need them in different circumstances. You want to be able to call on them whenever is necessary. And it's so useful, especially if you're in the charge of a ministry, to recognize what these are so that you can call up your volunteers that you're about to go into a situation where one of those skill sets, one of those natural personality proclivities, is best attuned to the needs of that environment and atmosphere.